now.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Pitch Slaps. I am Dan. I am here with Stefen, and we have a special guest here, Rob, chef extraordinaire, self-proclaimed Hot Mess Express. Sorry, I forgot the rest of your title, Rob, but this is Rob with us.
Rob is the perfect title, but everything else is just like cherries on top. So.
Okay. Okay. Mwah. Awesome. So, we've sort of spelled out the premise of the show. It's basically a glorified writer's circle, and we're just gonna talk writing ideas and get some feedback. So, in this episode, I have a little kernel of an idea to share with the fam. So I've been writing a story for the past week and a half. It's still in its ugly baby stage. Like it's not looking good, but every person starts off as an ugly baby, and I think every story does as well. So, I'm just going to say this is my ugly baby so far. So the premise of this story, I wrote down like a 2-sentence premise. Okay, so after the death of her husband, a grief-stricken woman seeks comfort in the company of a pet raven. But when the raven speaks, sounding like her husband, she seeks revenge on those she believes took part in her husband's death. So that's kind of like a watered-down version of what I was going for. There's a few characters that I have on the table. They're still pretty messy. The main character to focus on, I guess, is Eleanor Grierson. She's the widow. She's the widow consumed with grief. Her husband is Henry. It's also what she names her bird. And then a third character who is maybe the narrator, maybe not. Her name, I believe, is Marielle Walker. And she is a neighbor across the street. She's either telling the story from like a witness perspective, or she's like, just part of the story, and the narrator is just a third person omniscient narrator. I haven't decided what works for the story. So it's a weird story, but I was trying to combine some elements of my favorite short stories. So one of those being A Rose for Emily by William Faulkner. I'm not sure if you guys have read it, but it's such a good creepy story. It's about this old woman in this southern town who she's not liked by anybody in town, and basically the whole town is trying to figure out what her vibe is. And at the end, you find out like she killed a man and she kept his corpse, and she like slept with the corpse. It's a really sad but also terribly creepy ending. And it's one of my favorite stories. Well, favorite horror stories, I should say. It's not my go-to if I just need to relax, but it's a good story. Also, Edgar Allan Poe is somebody who I really enjoy, so I was trying to pull a little bit from him. Shirley Jackson, she's always writing about these weird events happening in sort of suburbia. So, those are the people I've been reading lately, so I'm trying to like draw some inspiration from that. I guess like the kernel of this idea came because I wanted to write like a horror story or something spooky related to a bird. My grandma, I guess that comes from my grandma. My grandma, she passed away a couple of years ago, but she loved birds. She was a big fan of birds. And I don't know, I just admired that about her. And she was also big into horror movies and, you know, stuff like that. So I was like, you know what, maybe I'll write a story for my grandma, you know, if she was here. And basically that's it. I don't have much else to share. I don't have a cast because it's still in its ugly baby stage, so I'm not gonna try to cast these people. It doesn't even really have a title. I have a couple of ideas for titles, but nothing that's sticking so far. So yeah, thanks for listening. It's a weird idea.
I love the spooky bird, I don't know, trope, I guess you could call it, like ravens, crows, corvids. I love that. It's one of my favorite things. And like you mentioned Edgar Allan Poe. And whenever I think of Edgar Allan Poe, I obviously think of like all his spookiness, but I also think of this show. I was on TV a while back. It had Kevin Bacon in it. It was called The Following. It was about this like spooky ass cult and they're murdering a bunch of people. And I don't know, whenever I hear those things, I love that spooky vibe that they elicit. So I definitely am down for a bird telling people to murder people.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. Thanks for the support.
I have not seen the Following, but I as well am a big fan of horror movies in general, and I like the idea of this woman seeking vengeance on those she believes took her husband from her. Revenge films, revenge stories are always solid winners in my book. So I guess I'm curious, for one, what were some of the titles that you did come up with?
They're bad. They're like atrocious. So I guess one of them was an unkindness of ravens. So a cluster of ravens is called an unkindness. And I just thought that was kind of like a cool fact. I don't know how it really fits into the story. I was like trying to like pluck that out of that title, but I don't know. I don't think it's gonna stick. Quoth the Raven was a title, which is so pretentious. I mean, this whole idea is kind of pretentious, but you know, that comes straight from Edgar Allan Poe. You know, the bird's nest, right? Like titles don't really matter to me, Stefen. You know, it's more like I'm more interested in like the characters and the story. You know, not that the title doesn't play a big role, but I'm still trying to figure out these characters and figure out how I want to tell the story. Because the draft that I have so far, it's told from a second person perspective. So it's like we saw Eleanor Grierson, you know, do X, Y, and Z. So it's told by like a community of people. And my idea with that, you know, was maybe there's like neighbors on the street who are like really like those old nosy neighbors who just talk about other people. And I was like, maybe this story, if it's about anything, it's about like ambiguity, you know. Is this woman who has this bird, is this woman just going nuts? Or did the person she accuses of killing her husband actually take part in killing her husband? So that is sort of the line I think I'm trying to go, you know, go with. But really, I'm just trying to figure out the story, you know. Like, what is this story about? It's just about, you know, a creepy raven right now. I'm trying to make it a little bit more, just a little bit.
I like that idea, but just to backtrack a little bit, when you gave your first title, The Unkindness of Ravens, and you were talking about like this perspectives of the story, for some reason it instantly went to me like the story's being told from her perspective, and like the ravens just hear like whispering in her ear, just like trying to push her further and further down a dark road, and like the story would be about like how far can you go before you go too far. I don't know. That's what it started like resonating with me. But I like your idea as well. Like, is she crazy or is she right?
Yeah. I mean, I like that too, Rob. You know, that was a good idea. You know, like the raven sort of being like a devil on her shoulder, being like, "Do it, take revenge, kill this other person. You know, yeah, that's a good idea.
I guess my next question, Dan, right? So, like, you're talking, I feel like there's a lot of roads to go on with this, kind of like Rob saying, with the Raven being the one telling her to do its bidding, right? To encouraging her to follow these acts, right? But the other idea I'm wondering, like, what is Henry and Eleanor's background, right? Like, who possibly did kill him? Were they part of some weird cult? And like Henry went against it, and then that's why she's seeing some bird. Like, oh, Henry liked birds. I'll take care of this bird, and then she doesn't want to be lonely, so she just talks to the bird, and the bird talks back, and she's like, Henry, and then she starts doing a whole bunch of crazy, stuff.
Yeah, so the story that I have so far, it does not have cults in it. I am sorry to disappoint Stefen. The story I have so far is that these characters are relatively old, like they're not young characters. Henry has been sick for a while. In the draft that I have, I don't know if I'm going to keep this version, but Henry has been sick. He has cancer. He has pancreatic cancer. And Eleanor has been taking care of Henry for like 7 years. He has stayed past his welcome. They said the jig was up after 5 years, but he's still kicking. And she's sort of in a state of denial, like, oh, he's gonna be okay, right? And even though like the evidence was there, like she's taken care of him all those 7 years, and she knows he's not doing well. When he dies, it's like, like she's not prepared for it. So have you? I guess one thing that I was thinking in the story a little bit about, I guess in hindsight, somebody could say, oh, it's a little bit like that. Have you heard of M. Night Shyamalan's Servant series on Apple? Have you heard anything about it?
I'm aware of its existence.
Yeah. It's kind of a cuckoo story, but it's, the premise is somebody who is so lost in grief that they try to get a surrogate, to replace that grief, So in that instance, it was a woman whose baby had died, and they give her like a fake baby, and she really thinks that this fake baby is her real baby. So in the draft I have so far, after Henry dies, she gets the Raven somehow. Like the neighbors don't know how. I didn't know how to explain how she got a Raven, so I was just like, she got a Raven someday. We don't know how, but she calls it Henry, which is her husband's name, and she starts talking to it like it's Henry. So like the neighbors are like creeped out by that. And one of the neighbors, Marielle, she is the one that Eleanor suspects took part in her husband's death. Now I have like another weird draft where it's like it's told from Marielle's perspective, and Marielle was sort of like she's sort of a lonely soul who's kind of nuts, and she feels for Eleanor watching Henry, be sick and having to watch Eleanor take care of Henry. And, she has a line where she's like, I would have never said this to somebody, but, I kind of wish the man would just die, just to save Eleanor, some heartache. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird, messy story so far. It's really in its ugly baby stage. There's no cult. I like that idea. I don't think I will integrate that, Stefen, unfortunately. I'm trying to make this like a contained story. Like if I bring a cult in, I have to like
go
all in.
I got you. That's a lot more work. I do have a couple ideas I'd like to throw at you, if that's okay.
Shoot.
So, like you mentioned, I like that whole. Firstly, is this like a gothic thing, or is this a modern day?
I don't know. I was thinking as far as setting goes, before the internet, before the internet. I was thinking somewhere in the South,
Like early 90s.
early 90s. Yeah,
Okay.
I could see that early 90s, just where it's just they live a simple life.
It sounds like there's a couple movies. Sam Raimi did one. I don't remember what it's called, but basically it has to do with a fortune teller. It could be like that because that's like set in the 90s, but it's also kind of like a very gothic story. But in terms of the Raven, you mentioned that the husband Henry likes birds, right? Like, so he likes birds. So what does someone who's sick, right, has cancer, he's probably in his bed, right? So all you can really do if you're near a window is like look out a window, right? And maybe this raven keeps showing up, right? So now for 7 or 5 years, this raven has just like periodically throughout the week been kind of like company to him. And then Henry dies, right? And then his wife keeps seeing the raven. And then eventually she invites it in and she keeps calling it Henry. Like she says, oh, when he's alive, he's like, oh, birds of a feather flock together, right? Henry and Henry or something like that. I don't know.
I actually really like that idea, Steph. I like the idea of, somebody who's sick and really can't do much, sort of like just connecting with birds. And then after his death, she like kind of takes it upon herself to like take that bird. Like, I'm going to take that bird and I'm going to call it Henry.
Yeah.
So I could totally see that. That was a really good idea. Yeah. And it like had meaning too. Like it wasn't like it just showed up, which is like what I was like. I had no idea how to like introduce the bird, so I like that.
Well, I know it plays on your idea, right? Because birds do just show up, right? You're only now, suggesting it's stuck around, right? Or you would see it periodically, which then could possibly tie into like you're talking about, and like Rob was saying, with she takes it in, she bonds to it and acts like it's talking to her. Right, like that kind of thing. Rob mentioned, however you end up going about it, like that's still pretty cool. Like somehow together they're plotting the demise of this Marielle Walker character. Now, is her death going to be something like, I'm not saying like Lizzie Borden, where she gets hacked up with an axe?
Oh, I just want to make a comment on the Raven thing before you go past it. I think Stefen's idea was a really good one, like a very well thought out explanation of where the bird comes from, because otherwise I feel like you have to go in the complete opposite direction, and like this bird has to like show up on her porch in a cage with no explanation. So yeah. I like his idea a little more, but otherwise I feel like just show up, oh cool, I have a bird now, and like its name tag says Henry. Okay.
No, yeah, that's a good point. Good point, Rob. Stefen
was talking about murder, so sorry.
Yeah. So Stefen, to answer your question, I keep on referring to this draft that you guys haven't seen, but in the draft that I have, she poisons Marielle. So there's at the beginning of the draft. It's a weird draft because it focuses on Eleanor, but it also focuses on Marielle too. And Marielle was offended, or she was hurt because she didn't get anything for her birthday. She's like a lonely old lady. She didn't have any family, and what she really she depended on was Eleanor sending a card every year, like baking her cookies or something, like a cake. I don't know, some like home-baked thing, right, that Eleanor traditionally did for her every birthday. And she didn't do it one year because she was so caught up in, taking care of Henry, understandable. But this is a really weird idea. So at the end of my draft, Marielle, she's worried about Eleanor because she hasn't seen her for a while. She hasn't seen her outside. So she like goes over to Eleanor's house. And like, I don't know if Eleanor was waiting for her or she was taken off guard, but she's like, oh, I have something for your upcoming birthday. I've been waiting to give it to you. You know what I mean? It's like cookies or something that she baked. You know what I mean? So like she like poisoned the cookies. I don't know. It was a weird. Well, it was sort of like she poisoned the cookies, and then Marielle ate the cookies, and then she gets introduced to Henry. So Eleanor's like, "Would you like to meet Henry?" And like Marielle's like, "Sure, why not? I'm already in your house. I've already committed to like this weird thing." And then while she's like, you know, while Marielle is like fainting, you know, because of the poison, like Eleanor goes to the Raven's cage, you know, and opens it and is like, "Get her, Henry." And that was like the end of my one of my drafts. Again, it's messy. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't really think she's gonna Lizzie Borden Marielle. If anything, like I'm even contemplating not having her kill Marielle. You know, it's still up in the air, but yeah. It's weird. It's weird so far, but I think there's something there that I like about it. I'm not sure quite what, but there's something.
No, yeah, the story has like from what you've described, like the story has very good bones, and like now you just have to like put the rest of the house there.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the house is going to stand up.
You got a really solid foundation. I can see what you're trying to do, and I'm excited to see how it ends.
Oh, thanks, Rob. Thank you.
No, definitely. Agreed. Same. It's really going to be good. And I think, Dan, like, you know, the two options you're presenting, right, possibly not even killing her up, that could even build more tension if that's the route you're thinking, right? It could just be about, like, you know, the Henry the Raven, like, talking to her. Like, it ends with, like, a line of dialogue that's just like, "Stick with me and we'll get them," or something in the end, like insinuating like, "Oh, I'm gonna listen to this bird and we're gonna do some crazy stuff together," right? Like, or your narrator could suggest like, you know, and with a wink and a feather, what's her name, Eleanor. Some sort of clever rhyme there. I feel like, you know, that's a really cool thing, but either way, it is good, right? It is good. People get attached to all sorts of things. So, and this bird thing is a perfect example of it.
Thanks. Thank you, guys. You guys have been good listeners. Good to bounce this idea off of. Hopefully, by the time this episode comes out, I'll have something tangible. So.
No, definitely. In your title, I think, right? Like you said, unkindness is just unkindness, right? Like if that was just your title, like, I mean, however it ends up coming out, it's going to be good. But it leaves you wondering, like, okay, what's that possibly about? And then it's like a fun little trivia, like you were saying, like, oh, that means like a collection of ravens. Like, that's cool.
Yeah. Again, the title is going to be like the last thing I think of, but thank you.
Oh, if you wanted to keep with like, sorry, random tangent about unkindness, but it means a collection of ravens. So if you made this like 3 short stories and they're each told from someone else's perspective, that makes them a collection of ravens.
There we go. That's I like that idea, you know.
The unkindness trilogy.
Yeah. I like that. That's cool. Good idea, Rob. I may steal that because I do have aspirations to write sort of like a short story collection of some sort, you know, something spooky. So maybe this is my end, you know. So thank you.
No problem.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's all I got. That's all, folks. Do we want to end the episode?
Yeah, but you gotta do the.
Okay. So thank you for listening to this episode of Pitch Slapped. Come again next week where we'll have more things in store. Thank you for listening and watching.